Well, let's do some politics now. There has been mixed reactions to indications that former President John Mahama will contest for the presidency in 2020. Of course, that is if the party gives him the nod. The former president has been evasive about the subject, but in a Facebook post, he stated, quote, "To you, the teeming supporters and sympathizers calling and requesting me to declare my intentions for the future, I wish to assure you today that as a servant leader, I have listened to your calls and reflected. I will not disappoint you, even as we await the publication of the party's guidelines for selecting a new leader." Well, moments after he said that, a political science lecturer at the University of Ghana, Dr. Bosman Asari, said the NDC would be jeopardizing their chances of winning the election if they maintain John Mahama as their candidate. Well, we'll be getting some more reactions on social media, which has been lit with what people think here and there. But in the studio with me is Evans Mensah, head of our political desk here at JoyNews. Let's see if we can tease out a bit of the implications we're looking at here. Evans, it's good to have you. It's been a while.
Good to be on your show, Gifty.
Let's just head straight to the sort of implications that the NDC will be staring at here if they should maintain John Mahama.
So it's a tough one for the NDC. Why? Because if you look at the field of contestants who have already expressed their aspiration to lead a party into the 2020 elections, it's which candidate has the most name recognition? John Dramani Mahama. Which candidate has the most resources to pull this off? John Dramani Mahama. Which candidate's track record are they going to use? John Dramani Mahama. Which candidate does the rank and file of the party know the most? John Dramani Mahama. So on all the scores I've just mentioned, it seems John Dramani Mahama is their best option, except that he lost a first-term election. And so the party, as far as the internal rank and file is concerned and internal primary, yes, is more likely to win the internal primary. And I agree with the political scientist analyst that if he wins the internal primary, he stands a bigger chance of losing the national elections to whoever the MPP puts up. We're assuming that now the Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo will run again. If he does, I don't see how John Dramani Mahama wins that elections.
If you say you don't see how, on what basis are we looking at?
On the basis of his track record.
Right.
The track record, I always say the biggest verdict you can get in politics on a person's suitability for the role as president is what you get in an election. And the resounding rejection that the citizens gave John Dramani Mahama in the 2016 elections is so overwhelming in our recent political history. It's unheard of for an NDC, candidate. In fact, since 2000, since 1992, when this constitution was adopted, we haven't seen that before. First time, again, he made history on the wrong side. He made the wrong kind of history, breaking all the positive records and making all the negative records. In other words, first president to lose in national elections after the first term, the first NDC candidate in the national elections to lose almost 1 million votes, the first national NDC candidate to perform so poorly in their stronghold, the Volta region. So all the records, the negative records, he broke, and he holds them. For me, that's what I look at to say, that for him to win the next elections 2020, something catastrophic must happen under this current administration for the voters, 1 million of them, to all of a sudden come back on his side.
Which is what brings me back to the next question. Could it not be that the NDC at the time had been in power for some time? John Evans Atamils of blessed memory was there. John Mahama comes to continue, and he does so for, he finishes Mills's term, continues with his term. Couldn't it be that people had just had enough of the NDC at the time? Couldn't there be reasons why they lost the way they lost in 2016? And if you come back to the NPP's records so far, being in power for the past 2 years so far, will it not be a point of reference for the people of Ghana if they have to make a choice on these two people?
So two things you've mentioned. One is the fact that he had assumed the reins of power under a serving president who unfortunately passed on. Yeah. And so he served the last few months of the unexpired term of John Evans Mills, and then he won the elections on his own strength, and then had one term. And so people look at it and say, well, NDC as a party had 8 years, and maybe that played into the heads of the voters. Yeah. That is a factor you can't dismiss. That's true. But the stronger factor is that he won on his own merit. Even John Dramani Mahama will tell you that he didn't win because people felt sympathetic because his former boss had died. He will tell you that I won because I won as John Dramani Mahama, and I worked for it. And listen to him, he defends his record over the last 4 years. And during the campaign, he argued that I am serving one term. Don't add the Mills administration to my term. That was just beginning my term. Yes, now. That was his own campaign rhetoric. And so it will be erroneous now. It's too late to now make that combination for him and say he was a first-term president and he lost it. That is the bottom line. The second point you made comes down to the current administration, the way they run affairs. The jury is still out on how good this government is. If you look at the economic statistics and the economic indices, the World Bank, the Raja Khans of this world tell us that they are astonished by the performance of this current government economically. Now, whether that translates into people's lives, for which reason they can then go to 2020 and say, well, our pockets have improved, let's vote the NPP a second term. Right. I don't know, because we have
because remember, Evans, that the NPP had a lot of mouth-watering promises. Free SHS is big, was big, and a number of things that people have actually complained about, whether it's materialized or not, etc. I mean, take the spare parts dealers at Abosokai. We've done several stories about how they feel disillusioned. You know.
Yes. So clearly, the NPP is now having to own reality. Reality, when you are in power, is quite different from when you're in opposition. But the truth is, they've tried to roll out. I guess the one that they've done successfully so far will be the free SHS. But we've had challenges.
Exactly.
Nonetheless, they've rolled it out. And kids are in school. My brother is a beneficiary of that, so I know. The thing, though, about the others is the one district, one factory. It's a big promise that hasn't taken off. In fact, the factory that the president himself used to launch the entire policy hasn't started working yet. In fact, the last time we checked, the operators and the managers of that facility say they can only start real work and get off the ground by December this year, which means that it is taking the MPP two years to get one factory up and running. And we have more than 200 districts. It was taking 2 years to get one factory. If you're using that, to judge,
it's going to take forever.
Yes, I mean, one factory every 2 years, you're going to probably take the rest of the human history to have the factories in place. That is a challenge. The one district, one dam, one village, one dam policy is under challenge. But they have 2 years. They have 2.5 years. Are they able to turn the challenges around reasonably in 2 years?
Speak of security as well, which has been big.
Yes,
a big disappointment to a number of people under this administration, for example.
Yeah, obviously, and they've tried to do something about it. I must admit, the security front, you know, I nearly moved into a part of the town where it had a lot of security challenges. I've seen improvements there. I've seen the vehicles. The last time, a real case scenario, a friend of mine had the gunshots in the area where I had a property, and they called the police. They didn't tell me they showed up in 3 vans, military and police fully armed. So we've seen improvements on the security front. So that could be dealt with. Improvement
across the board, or improvement in some places?
Well, I'm speaking to what I can verify.
What you
I
can
mean,
verify.
what I know.
Because we just run a story right now about an armed robbery case that happened in Manhia, where the vendor, a mobile money vendor, was shot in his leg, broad daylight. And we've seen quite a number of these broad daylight attacks.
True.
But we can move on and wrap up with the.
So yeah, as I'm saying, there's something catastrophic needs to happen. Something catastrophic hasn't happened yet. From all the financial indicators that we've seen, the government seem to be on the right economic path. We're just discussing the debt to GDP ratio, which today we are told is at 60% of GDP, when it used to be over 70%. But the argument has been because you're using the projected GDP, that's why you're having that. But you might not meet the GDP targets, and therefore it's erroneous. But that is a reality now. The question is whether this translates into people's pockets. And they have 2 years to make sure that all these fantastic indices that we hear from IMF, the Razakans of this world, etc., begin to reflect. And as you mentioned, the guys at Abosokan have told us last week when we went to measure that they still have challenges with
Eva, stay with me a short while. We'll hear Dr. Bosman Asare on why he thinks that the NDC should not give John Mahama a second chance. But let's do social media, because this particular story has been, as I said, has been, well, like the most talked about subject. Abu Sadiq says, no wonder they're preparing the grounds for him in the name of Unity Walk. Some of us in the NDC are waiting for him. This time not 44.4, but serious embarrassment. Tanko Abubakar says JM legacy will bring him in 2020. Within 3 years, JM has done a lot for this country as compared, you want to say, to Nanado. His vision is emulated by Kufuado, but in a wrong way. The president is leading the country in a wrong direction. JM at this era is the best. And you go on and on. Is the best. Okay, I missed that. Edward Biney says, I think he should retire because he had the chance to make things better, but kept on messing up. He did well, though, but he should let others to take up the mantle to 2020. Eric says, most of those opposing Mahama comeback are all NPP. They will certainly be booted out in 2020. Mark my words. Mahama will pair with Spio Gabra. Very interesting point you make there. Final one, Baye Jeremiah says he should contest because for now he is well known at the grassroots. Bringing new candidates and marketing him or her to the grassroots will be a serious challenge to the party. But his chances of winning the 2020 election will depend on the manifesto that the party will give to the electorate. That's a very nice way to end the social media reactions. And I'll have Evan speak to that. But listen to Dr. Bosman Asare.
From where I sit as a political scientist, I think the NDC will be making a very, very huge risk decision by going with Mr. Mahama. Well, we've noticed that since we began the Fourth Republic, anyone who is elected in the first term on the ticket of a political party will normally go for a second term. For NDC, you do the calculation. If you bring Mr. Mahama and he's not able to win, is it likely Mr. Mahama can come back again in 2024 or the party will give the chance? So if I were an executive in the NDC, the question will be asking Mr. Mahama, we know you win the primaries of the party, but what are you going to do differently from 20?
Dr. Bosman Asare there on his thoughts why the NPP should not give John Mahama a chance. But actually, Evans, wrap up with the social media comments we took, if you remember anyway.
Yeah. I think the last bit said it'll depend on the manifesto he put forward. I'm curious to know what kind of manifesto John Mahama will put forward, especially because of the manifesto he put forward in the previous, when he was the president. A number of the issues, a number of the things he put there could not be fulfilled, and for which reason I remember very clearly the building 200 senior high schools. He couldn't do it. And I look at that
he did some.
Well, he did some, that's the point. I look at that and it reminds me of the MPP's own promises. When you make promises in numbers, it's fantastic to win votes because people remember your promise. But it's a danger because then you can point to that and say you haven't achieved because it's in numbers. But my final point is, the 2020 elections is NPPs to lose. I don't know if you understand what I mean.
I understand.
It is MPPs to lose. If they don't want to lose that, in fact, they are in the driving seat. They determine who wins. I don't see how John Dramani, he will win the primaries, more likely. I don't see how he wins the 2020 elections against an MPP candidate. something seriously catastrophic has happened.
Okay.
Maybe the economic collapses or something.
We really have to wrap up because we've run out of time. But people have said that really what he put on social media, that we seem to be fussing over and making lots of noise about. People said Well, why was it news anyway?
Well,
like
everybody
everybody
knew
knew
he was going to run. I mean, so he's just been coy about it.
Don't you think he was taking time to make that decision?
No, the decision was made the
How
day.
Do you know?
The day, I know. That's my job as a head of the political desk. The decision was made the day after he lost the election, that he was going to run in 2020. I know people who wanted to contest it, who pulled out, who said they won't do it, they will support him and let him run again and see if he goes. Okay. And then they can then throw in their own, decision to run.
Evans, thank you so much for coming. Evans Besa is head of our political desk here at JoyNews, helping us with some analysis on John Mahama's chances should the NDC put him up in 2020.